Well, good morning, guys, and welcome to the Jake for the State podcast. So, got your Monday morning coming to you strong today, November 3rd, kicking off November strong. And it's hard to believe it is November already, but here we are, just a few weeks away from Christmas. Crazy to think about. 7:13 a.m. right now, getting started. And I'm going to cover what many are talking about in grassroots circles, and it is the Save Oklahoma plan. I'm going to break it down exactly what it proposes and ask the ultimate question: does it actually save Oklahoma? If this plan is implemented and adopted, what will be the results? How will it change the landscape of Oklahoma? And why have I not signed on to it yet? That's the question that I'm getting that people, it seems, want an answer to. So I'm going to address it head on. So let's get started.
This is the Jake for the State podcast, and this is the call for every red-blooded, God-fearing, liberty-loving patriot to prepare yourself, take your position, stand your ground, and advance the cause of freedom. Let's go.
Right, heading back to it this morning, the Save Oklahoma plan. Let's break it down. All right, this was introduced by Jim Shaw a few weeks ago and has been taken up by many grassroots organizations across the state of Oklahoma. This is what it proposes. You can see on the screen there. If you can't see on the screen, if you're listening by podcast, I will lay it out for you here. We have a 7-point plan, and these are the defining issues in summary. All right, so number one is fight the green energy agenda. It goes on to say that the so-called green energy scam is nothing more than taxpayer-funded corporate welfare that destroys rural communities. Oklahomans, not unelected bureaucrats, should decide if or where massive wind and solar projects go, and setbacks must protect homes, schools, and property values. Number two, prohibit agricultural use of biosolid waste. Says that Oklahoma families deserve safe food and clean water, not toxic sludge and human waste spread across our farmland. Number three, criminalize hostile foreign ownership of land. America's enemies should never own a single acre of Oklahoma soil. This is about sovereignty, security, and protecting our future. Number four, mandatory e-verify for all businesses. Protect Oklahoma jobs and wages. Businesses that follow the law should not be undercut by those hiring illegal labor. Number five, end perpetual toll roads and expose the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. The people have paid for these roads over and over again. It's time to end the never-ending tolls and shine a light on the turnpike bureaucracy. Number six, stop discrimination based on vaccination status. No government, employer, or school has the right to punish Oklahomans for their perpetual medical choices. Freedom means freedom. And finally, number seven, end taxpayer-funded lobbying. Taxpayer money should never be used to pay lobbyists who turn around and work against the very people footing the bill. All right, there's your summary. To recap that, fight the green energy agenda, prohibit biosolids, criminalize hostile foreign ownership of land, mandatory e-verify, end the toll roads, stop discrimination based on vaccination status, funded lobbying. All right, so we're going to work on breaking this down. And if it indeed is the ultimate plan to save Oklahoma, why have so many grassroots organizations hopped on board with this? And why is there the call, I would say more than a call, a requirement placed on all candidates, present and future, to adopt this plan, lest they be labeled a rhino and targeted really by the grassroots organizations that have signed on to this. Is that justified? Well, let's just dive into this and see what you think. I want to present this and represent this accurately, the Save Oklahoma plan. If you go to the website, saveoklahomaplan.com, it talks about its mission and origins. And it said the Save Oklahoma plan was initiated by Representative Jim Shaw with the aim of creating a more prosperous and conservative Oklahoma, something I think we all want. Our mission is to implement a series of strategic initiatives that address the state's most pressing challenges. With a conservative grassroots foundation and a commitment to principles, we strive to enhance the quality of life for all Oklahomans. And let's go here to the press release. I don't have this on the screen for you to see, but you can see it if you go to the website. For those of you listening, the press release says that this was introduced by Representative Jim Shaw, grassroots-driven campaign to hold every Republican in the 2026 legislative session and the Oklahoma primaries accountable to the people. Something I want, something I've been pressing for, is returning power and authority back to the people. And this seems like this is the intended objective of this Save Oklahoma plan. It says, under the Save Oklahoma plan, funds will be distributed to conservative grassroots organizations committed to contacting voters about the plan's issues through texting campaigns, petition drives, door-to-door canvassing, and digital marketing. These organizations have pledged they will not support or endorse any candidate who refuses to stand strong on all 7 of the issues outlined in the plan, even if that candidate happens to disagree with them on just one. That, to me, becomes problematic. All right. So let me just look at this here. First, this is distributed to conservative grassroots organizations, and the ones that are committed to contacting voters about the plan's issues. So the requirement of these grassroots organizations is that they promote this plan, that they contact voters about the issues through texting campaigns, petition drives, door-to-door canvassing, and digital marketing. So there's an all-out full court press to promote this plan across the state through the avenue of these grassroots organizations. Now, it says Shaw has personally committed up to $100,000. It's a lot of money. Personally committed up to $100,000. He's also calling on fellow conservatives to join him in the fight by making any possible donation to organizations supporting the Save Oklahoma plan to collectively match or exceed his contribution. Saying the movement must be fueled by patriots willing to put their resources where their values are. He urges Oklahomans to get loud, stay engaged, and hold every Republican's feet to the fire until they prove where they stand. I never have a problem letting people know where I stand. That's why I come in front of you frequently to do just that. So I agree with that objective. We need to know where legislators and representatives and candidates stand on all the various issues. So he put up this money, and by the way, I spoke with Representative Shaw just the other day. We went to Chandler to the Lincoln County GOP Boots and Bling event the other day. It was a great event. We had a great time out there. I happened to win the straw poll. That was a little plus. Representative J.J. Humphrey was there, of course, candidate for lieutenant governor, and he won the straw poll for lieutenant governor. So it was a good event, great food, good people. We all had a few minutes to speak. Representative Shaw was there and laid out this plan, and then I had a chance to speak with him later and had a great conversation and invited him to actually come on the show to talk further about this plan so we could have a live discussion. And so I, still welcome Representative Shaw to come on. Respect him as a legislator, and happy to see him in the House doing great things in the House. And so I'm not 100% on board with this plan. I'm about to tell you why. And I expressed these concerns to Representative Shaw and said that we need to have further discussion about this. And I'll just make this point up front, that as long as conservatives like myself, and I know others that I won't mention by names, I don't know if they want to be mentioned just yet, but I've talked to them in private, that are at the top of the conservative index, known as some of the most conservative in the House and the Senate, have yet to sign on to this because there's some concerns. So because of that, because we're seeing, some of us were simply informed about this after the fact, that it's released and saying, here's the plan. If you don't get on board, we're going to target you. That becomes problematic. And I expressed this to Representative Shaw, telling him that it would be unfair. I have concerns about some things, in particular, E-Verify, that I'm going to lay out here in just a second. And my concerns are conservative. I'll lay them out here in a second so you understand where I come from on this. But my concerns are conservative. So how would I be targeted by grassroots organizations that support me largely, yet if I don't sign on this plan because I have checks about centralized databases, because of that concern alone, then I would be, it says these organizations have pledged they will not support or endorse any candidate who refuses to stand strong on all 7 of the issues outlined in the plan, even if that candidate happens to disagree with them on just one. So if I'm reading this correctly, I disagree on one, but I must come out and stand strong on all 7. So essentially contradict my own conscience and say, I stand on all 7, even though I disagree on one of them. And if I don't do that, then these grassroots organizations will not support or endorse me. There's a problem there. There's a problem there. And after I have spoken with some very conservative legislators in the state, they've also expressed concern that while they were not informed about this, it would have been nice to work collaboratively on this, consult with all of the well-known, recognized conservative legislators who've been fighting this fight for years now, many of them. They've been in the trenches fighting for the people. And then from left field comes a plan and saying, this is the epitome of conservative leadership in the state. And if you're not on board with this, then you're not part of the team. And you will not be endorsed or supported by any of these grassroots organizations. This has riled up a few. And I'm not even talking about myself. I'm just saying I've spoken with some that are concerned about this. And so I think it's appropriate to address this now, before we allow this to continue. And let me tell you, I applaud this effort in general. Okay, I applaud any effort to hold legislators accountable, to prioritize the people, to remove the external influence of lobbyists and bureaucrats. All of these things need to be done. I think that is the intended objective of this plan. And so I applaud Representative Shaw and those organizations who have gotten behind that intended effort. However, the step too far is when it says, if you disagree on any one of these points, you're out. That's a step too far. Myself, that's where I stand. And then like I said, speaking to some other well-known conservatives across the state, that's where they stand as well. And it feels like bullying. It would have been better if we could have talked about this. And maybe it doesn't even have to be me, but if the other legislators in office, they would have liked to be looped into the conversation and discussed about what is the appropriate path forward to do just what this plan intends to do. Hold bureaucrats and legislators, remove the influence of bureaucrats and lobbyists, and hold legislators accountable and return power to the people. I mean, we all want that. The conservatives in the state want that. And so me talking to some others, they say, why weren't we informed about this before it was released? And now it's kind of being shoved down our throat. So this is one concern. But again, great effort here. Let me look through some of these objectives on the 7 points, and I'm going to highlight just one of them today because of limited time. And again, I welcome Representative Shaw to come on to talk about these. I had a great conversation with him the other day. I consider him a friend and a fellow conservative in the state, and glad to see him in the House. And I think that he is in a great place to continue fighting for the people of Oklahoma right there. So let me just review here the 7 points. Biosolids in agriculture, 100%. The human manure that we've all been talking about. I think this has been an atrocity. I learned about it in about 2022. I met a lady that is working actively in the state. You can check out her website, mission503.org. And, when I first learned about this, on the surface, talking about human manure being spread on farmland, it's gross, but is it viable? Is it legitimate? Can it be used as fertilizer? And is it a viable use of this waste that we're trying to figure out what to do with it? No, it's not. Long story short, it is full of toxins. It is biosludge. It is the byproduct. It is the byproduct of all of the drainage and whatever is flushed down every commode in the city. Now, what is flushed down commodes? We know the normal, but also the illicit drugs, the birth control, whatever else is flushed down the toilet. And then we're talking about industrial waste. What are we finding in manufacturing plants that are also going down the drains into the same ultimate end? And then also medical waste. What's flushed down the toilets in hospitals? I mean, you can imagine the concoction of toxins that ultimately find its way to the sludge. After the solids and the liquids have been separated, we have all of these solids remaining. What do we do with it? That is the question. Well, for years now, it's been used as quote unquote fertilizer spread on farmland, but it is so very toxic. And what does that do? Well, that is now leached into the soil, into the water. As it dries out and caught up by the Oklahoma wind, it's breathed in by those nearby, doing damage to people's lungs. And then, of course, it is captured in whatever's grown in the land, the wheat, the grass, and then eaten by the cows or whatever is grazing. Then we eat the cows. All of this stuff is eventually transferred back to us, the humans, where we're eating what is found in our own waste. And it's very sick, and it needs to end. I've said this before. After learning about this, I learned about Maine and how they use this practice for years. And now there's thousands of acres up in the state of Maine that are unusable because of PFAS, because of these 100-year chemicals that don't break down. And now they have thousands of acres of farmland that cannot be used. So we don't want that here in Oklahoma. We must preserve our land. The future of Oklahoma depends on two things: families and land, and we must protect them both. So this practice must end. All right, we need to have another method, and there are other ways of disposing of this waste that we don't have time to get into, but we must dispose of this waste, not spread it on farmland, just to be recycled and now doing damage to the health of Oklahomans and the damage to the land. So I agree with this point, 100%. Protect the soil, water, and food supply through banning biosolids, human manure, 100%. Criminalize foreign land ownership. And it says that hostile nations cannot buy Oklahoma land. This is intended to, of course, secure our sovereignty. And it stops those like the CCP from grabbing up our precious soil, precious land. So yeah, I do agree with this, but small caveat there. I believe this should apply, if I can talk, to all foreign ownership of land. I'm not sure that's entirely clear here. It says hostile nations cannot buy Oklahoma land. Now, what about nations that are not historically hostile to America? Are they able to? Because I would not want that either. I would want only Oklahoma citizens to be able to buy land. And it seems that this is suggesting, and I never want to misrepresent something. I'm going to pull this back up here, the Save Oklahoma plan. This is the thing, is I would like to see a lot more detail on these points. I'm just not finding a robust explanation of these points. Now, it may be there, but it's certainly not on the website. And so based on the limited information on the website, we're supposed to just sign on. Well, I want to fully understand the agenda before I just sign on. So we have hostile nations cannot buy Oklahoma land. Well, if that's just meaning that Russia and China, maybe Iran, that they can't buy Oklahoma soil, well, I think it should go further than that. I think that we should be very clear that no foreign country or foreigner can't own Oklahoma land. Of course, we need to close the loophole in our law that's allowing those who intend to become citizens and still allowing them to buy land. And so that can be justified in any way, shape, or form. I mean, there's various ways to justify your intent to become a citizen. No, that needs to be done. They can't be in the process of becoming a citizen. They need to become a citizen, and then they can buy land. And I don't want this to be reserved to just those nations that are historically hostile to Oklahoma or the nation. So again, just a small detail there that I would like clarity on that I don't find in the explanation. Fight the green energy agenda. Again, something I've spoken robustly about. I've talked about the expansion of solar industrial complexes. I don't call them solar farms because I think that is a bit of manipulation there, attempting to use agriculturally zoned areas for these solar farms. They're not farms, they're solar industrial complexes, and they have no place on our farmland. So I can get on board with this, to fight the green energy agenda. I do believe it is an agenda that's deeply rooted in the climate change agenda. So because it's an agenda, it overlooks its inefficiencies. It's inefficient production of energy. It's oftentimes, from what I've heard from landowners, the pressure and the railroading over landowners to get these things across the state of Oklahoma. Numerous times just this last year, we've seen them driven out. I was just speaking with a lady just yesterday about the attempt to install the 700-foot tall windmills, wind turbines around Lake Eufaula. And the people rose up and said, no, we don't want them here. And they drove them out. So we've seen this happening across the state, this uproar of the people saying, we don't want this. And I am on board with the point number 3 in the Save Oklahoma plan. Oklahomans should decide on wind and solar. There should be proper setbacks to protect homes, schools, property values. This is going to stop the corporate welfare that I've been speaking about, and it just preserves our rural Oklahoma farms and ranches. So I'm on board with this. End perpetual toll roads and OTA abuses. Again, a point I have been very vocal on with the OTA. Got numerous issues with them. Number one is that they need more legislative oversight. And we saw the OTA raise the tolls without that legislative check And so we're concerned about this. So many are. And this says no more endless tolls. Now, what I've been saying is I want to open the discussion about ending tolls in Oklahoma. It's not a firm decision on my part. I could see a place where we could have tolls in Oklahoma, toll roads in Oklahoma, but I don't like the way it's going right now. It seems that we're never paying these things off, and we perpetuate this organization, which seems to only benefit the contractors in the state who are building them. So we need to talk about getting them paid off. Number one, let's pay these things off. And I have concerns about who owns the bonds on these toll roads. I have not gotten a clear answer on that. And it seems that these bonds can often be traded and bought and sold. So that's very unsettling to me to know that someone outside of the state of Oklahoma could control our toll roads. Now, is there a place for them? Is there a plus at all? There could be. There could be if it's done correctly. If they were paid off and then we were able to use the profits from these tolls, not only to maintain them, but then also maybe even going towards something like education. As I've been talking about ending property tax in the state of Oklahoma, this might be a way to offset that, possibly. So there could be some benefits of keeping them around, but it needs to have massive restructuring, and we need to pay them off so we can have actual control of our own roads. So while I agree somewhat on this point number 4 of the concerns with the OTA, I am not firm on ending them completely. I think that's a possibility, and I want to talk about that. It wouldn't be the worst thing if we did end them, but again, we need to have some debate and discussion, and I can't come down firmly on this. And if I can't come down firmly on this, will I be ousted by the grassroots communities across the state? That's the question here. So, number 5, ban taxpayer-funded lobbying. 100%. I mean, ban state dollars for influence peddling. Yes, I think I could see everybody in the state getting on board with this. We despise this outside influence that seems to minimize the voice of the people and prioritize the voice of the elites, who seem to have their hooks in our representatives. So, yeah, I would like to move forward with this, banning state dollars for influence peddling, stopping the taxpayer-funded lobbying, 100%. Let me see, this list I have in front of me is my modified list. So let me come back here to the website so I make sure we hit them all. I'm gonna skip the E-Verify for a second and come back to that. Stop discrimination based on vaccination status. Yes, definitely something I spoke out about when I was in the Senate. In the Senate right there in the height of COVID. No government, employer, or school has the right to punish Oklahomans for their personal medical choices. Freedom means freedom. 100%. As most of you know, I'm right in the middle of this issue with Dana Mooney fighting DHS, fighting the state for her parental authority to decide what is best for her son, her 17-year-old son who's battling leukemia. And this is part of this medical freedom fight that I am 100% on board. We should be able to decide what goes into our own bodies and the bodies of our children. We are the parents. We are the ultimate authority. So, yeah, no government, employer, or school has the right to punish Oklahomans for their personal medical choices. I am on board with this 100%. And let's see if I covered them all. I think I got them all except for E-Verify. And I want to just, in the time remaining, hit some of the high points on my concerns with E-Verify. And then I'm gonna come back and talk about this more, because this can be a a complicated issue, and I just want to make sure we cover it thoroughly. Now, to highlight what the Oklahoma plan, the Save Oklahoma plan says, it says protect mandatory e-verify for all businesses, protect Oklahoma jobs and wages. Businesses that follow the law should not be undercut by those hiring illegal labor. Now, of course, with the influx of illegal aliens in the state, this is why this has become so central. And yes, we must address illegal aliens in the nation. I'm on board with it. It's a federal issue primarily. It does impact every state, and we have seen Governor Stitt take an initiative to remove those who have committed crimes, starting in our prisons, which I agree with. It's a great starting point, is to remove the criminals that are being housed in our prisons, living off of our taxpayer money, being fed, having a bed, in our prison system. We need to go ahead and deport them and let their countries of origin decide what to do with them. Hopefully keep them in prison wherever they're at. And so I think that was a good starting point, and then focusing on those that came across during the Biden administration, just running across with no checks. We have no idea who they are, just roaming throughout our country, our state, and they need to be deported. They came in illegally with permission of Biden, unfortunately, but I'm on board with Tom Holman and President Trump on this. I know Stitt is. I've talked to Commissioner Tim Tipton on this and their efforts to work with the feds to get them deported. So yeah, I think we can all agree, most everyone agrees that this must be dealt with. And it is. The question is, to what extent? And will E-Verify help in this mission? And if it does help in this mission, does that justify using it or even mandating it? That's the question. I don't believe it does. I have concerns about E-Verify. Number one, it's a central database. Okay. The argument is not, and I talked with Representative Shaw about this the other day, and his argument was, well, it is only collecting data that the government already has. Talking about Social Security numbers, data that the government already has. However, the government having data is not the same as the government mandating private employers to run every single hire through a federal database in real time. So creating a permanent, searchable record of every American worker's employment history tied to biometric photos and subject to errors, I think this is abuse. So it's not just access to this data, namely Social Security numbers, biometric photos. It's not just access, it's compelled, it's mandated use, and it's a new infrastructure. So they may say they already have the Social Security numbers. They're already in federal files. But the federal government does not currently require every employer to submit every new hire's Social Security number, photo, and personal data into a centralized real-time verification system. I have big issues. I think that we are slowly stepping into a trap. We're slowly stepping into a trap. And this is the argument that's being used with surveillance, license plate surveillance. It can be justified for the greater good, but how does this violate our individual rights? Should they have the right to scan the public in general, collect data on everyone? Does this violate our Fourth Amendment? Does this lock us all into this system where we're being monitored on a constant basis. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of seeing cameras on every corner. There are those that love this. Hey, this is going to create the ultimate safe society when everybody's monitored all the time. Well, I think this is the surest way to ensure enslavement if we subject ourselves to constant monitoring. And this is one of my concerns with E-Verify. I'm not going to just jump on board with this because of pressure from around the state, because I have real concerns about this. And if I have real concerns, conservative concerns about this, and because of my concerns with 1 point, I'm going to be rejected by the grassroots, well, so be it. I'm not going to violate my conscience or compromise in my convictions to be accepted. Okay. I'll let the people decide how conservative I am. And I think it's well documented how conservative I am. And I think the conservative position on this is not more surveillance, not more documentation, because the focus is usually on, when we talk about E-Verify, we're talking about we want to catch the illegals and require that all employers reject illegals. And as Representative Shaw said, remove that incentive to come across the border. They're coming across to work. True. And this would help. But does that justify the increased monitoring of every American's privacy and personal identity? I'm leaning towards a no on that. There are errors in these databases. It's relatively low, 1 to 2% error rate. But what that means is you might be a legitimate legal citizen, and there could be an error in the system that rejects you. The employer cannot hire you until this is fixed. Where does that error come from? It comes from within the government's own database. So how long is that going to take to be fixed? I don't know. Whenever the government gets around to it. So you might be a legitimate hire, but if the government has an error in their system, you have to wait on them to fix it. So one more reason, one more way in which innocent legal citizens might be impacted negatively by this. It can be a slippery slope, and this leading to a national ID. All right, we've already been talking about this with the real ID. Real concerns about this. E-Verify, was sold as voluntary going back all the way to 1996. And now it's mandatory in 23 states, and it's being pushed hard now. We have DHS already using E-Verify to flag the legal workers for the ICE audits. This is going back to a 2020 OIG report. And so this is a slippery slope that could lead to this national ID requirement. And I have concerns about it for that reason. I'll stop there as far as, well, I'll just add this one more point. I mean, it is a centralized database, and it does require more from small businesses. I'm interested in reducing the red tape, not increasing the red tape. It's already hard enough for small businesses to make it. And so I don't want to make it any harder on small businesses. I'm not trying to create a loophole to allow for illegals to be hired. I'm not trying to argue that point. What I am saying is this is an increased burden on small businesses. It would require employers to enroll, train staff, and handle appeals, because there will be those who contest the results. And the estimated cost per small business based on the Bloomberg government study was $300 to $1,000 per small business annually. $300 to $1,000. And if you're in a small business like I am, that can be burdensome. Sometimes you're just barely hanging on. Sometimes you're not getting paid while you're paying your employers. Sometimes you stay in debt working on getting out of it. And so an additional $300 to $1,000 could be burdensome. We have groups like the National Federation of Independent Businesses and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They argue that it's an unfunded mandate that stifles entrepreneurship. In states like Arizona, small firms report hiring freezes or shifts to cash payments to avoid paperwork. And ultimately, I believe it's just this increased regulation and regulatory overreach that will not help. It'll actually stifle small businesses. There's a better way to address the illegal alien issue, starting with getting behind what Trump is already doing, which I think we are, and not putting more burden on our small business owners. Again, not trying to defend hiring illegals, not trying to defend that at all. It's just, as we justify this method, are we stepping into a more centralized controlling government? Are we stepping deeper into enslavement and not deeper into freedom? That's my concern with that. So this is a broad overview. I want to have more conversation on the Save Oklahoma plan. Like I said, I have invited Representative Shaw on. Love to have a conversation discussing these issues. But here's the big point is we need to have more discussion before this mandate that everybody jump on board, lest you be ostracized by the conservatives across the state. That's unfair. I told Representative Shaw that the other day. And I'd like to talk more about this. The final point is, even if we accomplished all of this, even if I was 100% on board with all of these points and we accomplished all of this, this would not even touch the root issue, which is the degradation of our nuclear families. And so we are looking right now at gross abuse in our judicial system, in DHS, so in our correctional facilities. So we have so many other areas that are vital to preserving freedom, vital to saving Oklahoma. Again, if I agreed with all 7 points and was fully on board and we implemented all of these, this, I believe, would not even begin to touch our root issues, our fundamental issues. So these are the areas I just want to just come out and be transparent and open with you. I'm going to put out a more concise video on all of these to talk about them all. Again, no negative feelings toward Representative Shaw. I appreciate his effort in this. I think he's an asset to the state of Oklahoma. I think that we all just need to be part of this conversation. The other conservative legislators I've spoken to want to be part of this plan, in developing it and refining it. And in the end, I don't believe it can be a mandate, because you're going to have some varying degrees of, different approaches. You're just going to have different approaches to some of these topics of possible solutions. So all of those need to be on the table. And the purpose of the legislature, the purpose of the House and the Senate is to debate these things. Let's bring this before the body to debate and discuss. Let it not be already decided behind closed doors and then forced on the rest of the state. I believe that's not the right approach. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, your responses to this. Again, not slamming this entirely. I just have an issue with the grassroots coming after those who may not agree on every point. All right, we need to work together. I want to promote unity across the state. Let's work together to have a better Oklahoma. These are my thoughts on the Save Oklahoma plan. Love to get yours. So, hey, be sure to share this. We need this to be part of a broader discussion around the state. Love to know your thoughts on it. Send it to me, jakeforthestate@gmail.com. You can put it in the comments, of course. I'm sure we're going to get lots of ideas and comments coming back, and I look forward to that. But in the meantime, if you could like, share, and subscribe to this channel, that helps get the conversation going around the state. And I will see you next time.